You belong in the trash. Those were the last words my father said to me before he threw my suitcase out the front door. My name is Lena Brooks, and that night, I stopped being someone's daughter, not because I chose to leave, but because I was told I didn't belong anymore. It wasn't a dramatic fight, no screaming, no chaos, just a quiet conversation that turned into something final. You've wasted enough time, my father said, standing in the hallway, arms crossed, voice controlled. Controlled voices are always worse because they don't leave space for emotion, only decisions. I'm trying, I said. I just need more time. Time. That was always the issue. To him, time was something you earn, not something you ask for. You've had time, he replied, flat, cold, and you've done nothing with it. Nothing. That word stayed with me because it erased everything I had been doing, quietly, consistently. Freelance work, online projects, late nights building something of my own. But none of that mattered because it didn't look like success in his eyes. You don't understand what I'm building, I said, trying one last time. I understand enough, he cut in, and I'm done supporting it. Supporting it as if I was a burden, as if my presence was something he was tolerating, not something he wanted. You need to leave, he said, just like that. No warning, no timeline, just a decision. Where am I supposed to go? I asked, not emotionally, not dramatically, just honestly. He didn't hesitate. That's not my problem anymore. Silence filled the hallway. Heavy, final, unavoidable. I looked at him, really looked, trying to find something, anything. Regret, doubt. But there was nothing, just certainty. And that's when he said it. The sentence that changed everything. You belong in the trash. My chest tightened, not because it hurt immediately, but because something inside me went quiet, completely quiet, because words like that don't just insult you. They define how someone sees you. And for the first time, I understood exactly how he saw me, not as his daughter, not as someone trying, but as something disposable, replaceable, worthless. I didn't respond because there was nothing left to say. He picked up my suitcase, opened the door, and threw it outside. The sound it made, hitting the ground, echoed louder than anything else. Because it wasn't just a bag. It was a message. Clear, direct, final. I walked toward the door slowly, picked up the suitcase, and for a moment, I turned back, not to argue, not to plead, just to see if anything would change. It didn't. He closed the door. And just like that, I was alone, standing outside, the only place I had called home, with nothing but a suitcase and words that wouldn't leave my mind. You belong in the trash. I stood there for a while, not moving, not thinking, just existing. Because sometimes shock doesn't break you. It pauses you. Then slowly something else begins to form. Not anger, not sadness, something deeper. Awareness. Because in that moment, I realized something important. If that's how he saw me, then I had nothing left to prove to him, only something to prove to myself. I picked up the suitcase again, started walking. No plan, no destination, just movement. Because staying there was no longer an option. But what he didn't know was that throwing me out was the worst decision he would ever make. The streets felt different that night. Not unfamiliar, just colder. Even though nothing had changed physically. Same roads, same houses, same city, but everything felt distant because I wasn't part of it anymore. I walked without direction, not because I didn't have options, but because I didn't want to choose too quickly. Choosing meant accepting, and I wasn't ready for that yet. My phone buzzed. Low battery. Of course, because life doesn't pause when things fall apart. It keeps moving, whether you're ready or not. I stopped under a streetlight, set my suitcase down, and finally sat, because my body needed rest, even if my mind didn't. That's when reality hit properly, not emotional, practical. I didn't have a place to sleep. I didn't have stability. And for the first time, I understood what being truly alone felt like. Not emotionally alone, physically alone. No safety net, no backup, just me. I opened my phone again, scrolled through contacts. Names appeared, friends, acquaintances, people I could call. But my finger didn't move, because asking for help felt heavier than carrying everything myself. Pride, maybe, or maybe I just didn't want to explain. Not yet. Then one name caught my attention. Mia. We hadn't spoken in months. Not because of a fight. Just distance. Life. But she was always someone who understood without needing details. I hesitated, then pressed call. 1 ring. 2. Lena? Her voice. Familiar. Real. Hey. I paused, because saying it out loud made it real again. I need somewhere to stay. No long explanation. No details. Just truth. She didn't ask questions. Didn't hesitate. Come over. That was it. 2 words. And suddenly, everything didn't feel as heavy. Not fixed, but manageable. I stood up, picked up my suitcase. And for the first time since everything happened, I had direction. Not a solution, but a step. And sometimes a step is enough. But I didn't realize yet that this was only the beginning of something much bigger. Mia didn't ask questions that night. And I was grateful for that. Because sometimes explaining your pain makes it heavier. She handed me a blanket, cleared space on the couch, and just said, rest. Simple. No judgment, no curiosity, no pressure. And that silence felt safe. But rest didn't come easily. My eyes were closed, but my mind wasn't. It replayed everything. The hallway, the suitcase, the door. And his words. You belong in the trash. Over and over again. Like a loop I couldn't stop. Because it wasn't just something he said. It was something he believed. And for a moment, I questioned if it was true. Not loudly, but quietly. The kind of doubt that creeps in when you're at your lowest. What if he's right? That thought didn't last long, but it existed, and that was enough to shake me. Morning came quickly, too quickly, because reality doesn't wait for you to process. It expects movement. I sat up slowly, looked around Mia's apartment. Warm, calm, normal. So different from what I felt inside. You okay? She asked from the kitchen. I nodded, even though I wasn't. But saying no felt like giving up. And I wasn't ready to do that. I walked over, sat at the table. Coffee in front of me, steam rising slowly. Do you want to talk about it? She asked gently. I paused, because now there was no avoiding it. He told me I belong in the trash, I said. The words felt strange coming out, not because they weren't real, but because saying them made them exist outside my head. Mia didn't react immediately. She didn't interrupt, didn't comfort. She just listened. and that mattered more than anything. He kicked me out. I continued, just like that. Silence again. But this time, it felt different, stronger, because I wasn't holding it alone anymore. You don't believe that, right? She asked. I looked at her, and for the first time, I answered honestly, I don't know. That was the truth. Because when someone you've known your entire life says something like that, it doesn't just hurt. It plants doubt. And doubt is dangerous. Mia leaned forward slightly. Then let me be clear, she said. You don't belong in the trash. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was certain. And if someone can't see your value, she added, that says more about them than you. Those words didn't fix everything, but they shifted something. Slightly. Enough to breathe. Enough to think. And that's when I realized something important. I had two choices. I could carry his words and let them define me, or I could rebuild and prove them wrong. Not to him. To myself. I stood up slowly. I need to work, I said. Mia smiled slightly. Good, she replied, because she understood. This wasn't about distraction. This was about direction. I opened my laptop, sat down, and for the first time since everything happened, I wasn't thinking about what I lost. I was thinking about what I could build. And that decision became the turning point he never saw coming. The first few days were difficult, not emotionally, structurally, because building something without stability requires discipline, and discipline doesn't come from comfort. It comes from necessity. I started with what I had, my skills, my experience, my unfinished ideas, projects I had once treated casually now became critical. Every email mattered. Every client mattered. Every opportunity mattered. I worked longer hours, not because I wanted to, because I had to. Days blended into nights. And slowly, things started moving. One client turned into two, two into three. Small steps, but consistent. And consistency changes everything. Weeks passed. Income stabilized. Not perfect, but enough. Enough to breathe. Enough to stand. Enough to believe. Then one evening, I received a message, different from the others. Not a small project, a large one. A company looking for long-term collaboration. I read the message twice, because this wasn't luck. This was alignment. Everything I had been building quietly, finally being seen. We scheduled a call, and during that call, something shifted. They didn't treat me like a beginner. They treated me like someone who knew exactly what she was doing. And for the first time, I saw myself that way too, not through someone else's judgment, through my own work. We'd like to move forward, they said. Simple words, but powerful, because they changed everything. And that moment was the beginning of a life he never imagined for me. Months passed. Everything changed. Not overnight, but steadily, predictably, earned. I moved into my own place. Not big, not luxurious, but mine. Every detail inside it represented effort, not approval, not permission, just work. And that's what made it valuable. Then one day, I decided to go back. Not for closure, for clarity. I stood in front of the same door, the same place where everything ended. Or so he thought. I knocked. Footsteps. The door opened. And there he was. Same expression, same presence. But something was different. Not in him. In me. Because this time, I wasn't standing there uncertain. I was standing there complete. You, he said, not surprised, just unsure. I came to return something. I said calmly. He didn't respond, because he didn't understand yet. And that was okay, because what came next wasn't loud, but it changed everything. I looked at him, not with anger, not with resentment, just clarity. You were wrong, I said. Simple, direct, not aggressive, but undeniable. He didn't respond immediately, because this wasn't an argument. This was reality. I didn't belong in the trash. I continued. I just didn't belong in a place where I wasn't valued. Silence. Heavy. Real. Because some truths don't need explanation. They just need to be said. I didn't wait for a response. I didn't need one. Because this moment wasn't about him anymore. It was about me and who I had become. I turned, walked away, not slowly, not dramatically, just forward, because that's what growth looks like. Not revenge, movement. And behind me, the past stayed exactly where it belonged. In the past, because sometimes the strongest response is becoming everything they said you couldn't be. Months passed, everything changed. Not overnight, but steadily, predictably, earned. I moved into my own place. Not big, not luxurious, but mine. Every detail inside it represented effort, not approval, not permission, just work. And that's what made it valuable. Then one day, I decided to go back. Not for closure, for clarity. I stood in front of the same door, the same place where everything ended, or so he thought. I knocked. Footsteps. The door opened. And there he was. Same expression, same presence. But something was different. Not in him, in me. Because this time, I wasn't standing there uncertain. I was standing there complete. You, he said, not surprised, just unsure. I came to return something. I said calmly. He didn't respond, because he didn't understand yet. And that was okay, because what came next wasn't loud, but it changed everything. I looked at him, not with anger, not with resentment, just clarity. You were wrong, I said. Simple, direct, not aggressive, but undeniable. He didn't respond immediately, because this wasn't an argument. This was reality. I didn't belong in the trash. I continued. I just didn't belong in a place where I wasn't valued. Silence. Heavy. Real. Because some truths don't need explanation. They just need to be said. I didn't wait for a response. I didn't need one. Because this moment wasn't about him anymore. It was about me and who I had become. I turned, walked away. Not slowly, not dramatically, just forward. Because that's what growth looks like. Not revenge, movement. And behind me, the past stayed exactly where it belonged. In the past. Because sometimes the strongest response is becoming everything they said you couldn't be. If this story reflects anything, it's this. The opinions of others, even those closest to you, are not definitions, they are limitations. And limitations, once challenged, reveal something far more powerful. Your actual potential. Growth doesn't require validation. It requires direction, discipline, and the decision to continue regardless of what was said.